Everyone told me it would be safe, comfortable, and easy, but no one warned me about what I'd lose. These 6 truths changed everything after I moved into a nursing home. I didn't move in because I was forced. I moved in because it sounded like the right choice. Meals prepared, medical care nearby, people around, and no more worrying about laundry or bills. It sounded peaceful. And at first, it was. But slowly, quietly, I began to notice the trade-offs. Little freedoms disappeared. Conversations felt more like checklists than connection. Days blurred together. And the deeper truth started to sink in: I wasn't just living in a nursing home. I was shrinking inside of one. No one really prepares you for that part. There's a side to institutional care that rarely gets talked about. Not the horror stories or abuse, that's not what this is about. This is about the emotional erosion that happens when your life becomes structured for convenience, not meaning. In this video, I want to share the 6 hardest truths I learned after moving into a nursing home, things I wish someone had told me before I made the decision. Whether you're considering the move, or have someone you love facing it, these truths are worth hearing. They're not here to scare you, but to prepare you. Because regret doesn't come from making a decision. It comes from making one without knowing what's really on the other side. Let's begin. Truth number 1. One of the first things I noticed after moving into the nursing home was how many small freedoms quietly disappeared. At home, I could wake up whenever I wanted. Make tea at 2 a.m., walk outside in my pajamas. Sit in silence or blast music. No one was watching. No one was timing. I didn't realize how much those small choices made me feel like myself, until I had to give them up. In the nursing home, everything runs on a schedule. Breakfast at 8. Meds at 9. Activities at 11. Lunch at noon. Rest time after. It sounds organized, and for many, it is. But what they don't tell you is that over time, that structure can start to feel like a cage made of kindness. You're not told what to do out of cruelty. It's all done to keep things smooth, efficient, manageable. But in the process, your personal rhythm vanishes. The little things that made your day feel yours. Gone. Even things like when to bathe, what to wear, or what you can eat become part of the system. And the scariest part? You stop noticing. Because routines have a way of numbing awareness. One day I caught myself asking permission to have a second cup of tea. That's when it hit me: I was slowly being trained out of my own independence. If you're fiercely independent, this loss might not feel dramatic at first. But over weeks and months, it quietly chips away at your identity. And that's the hard truth: you don't lose your freedom all at once. You lose it in small pieces, so gently you barely notice it, until you can't find it anymore. Truth number 2. Before I moved into the nursing home, people would say things like, "At least you won't feel lonely there, so many people around you." And for a while, I believed them. But here's the truth no one mentions: being surrounded by people isn't the same as feeling connected. Yes, there were residents in the lounge. Nurses in the hallway. Voices echoing down the corridors. But rarely did any of it feel personal. I was in a crowd, but I felt invisible. At home, even if I was physically alone, I still had my world, my memories in the walls, my routine, my phone calls when I wanted them. In the nursing home, everything feels shared, except your emotions. You're not supposed to be sad. You're in a safe place. So when the loneliness creeps in, it gets buried instead of expressed. You smile during bingo. Nod during meals. Pretend you're fine. But inside, you miss someone calling you by name and really meaning it. You miss being missed. I remember one evening, I was sitting in the common room while a movie played. 15 people in the room, yet I felt more alone than I ever had in an empty house. No one talks about that kind of loneliness. The kind that comes not from being alone, but from feeling unseen. And the truth is, In places where everything is structured, emotional connection can feel like a luxury, something there's no time for. So if you think moving into a nursing home will erase your loneliness, think again. Because unless there's real connection, the silence inside you follows wherever you go. Truth number 3. One of the most surprising things I discovered after moving into a nursing home was how quickly I became a room number instead of a person. At first, it's subtle. You hear your name less and less. Staff rotate shifts so often, many don't know your story or your preferences. Someone brings you tea with sugar, not realizing you've been drinking it plain for 30 years. Someone else walks in with meds, calls you sweetheart, and leaves before you can ask a question. No harm intended. No cruelty involved. But still, the message is clear. You're part of the routine, not a relationship. In a place built to care for dozens, sometimes hundreds, of people, efficiency starts to matter more than individuality. And even when the staff are kind, and many truly are, there's just not enough time to treat every resident like a unique human with a full history. I once tried to share a story about my late wife with a nurse while she was helping me dress. She smiled politely, but glanced at the clock. I stopped talking halfway through the memory. It wasn't her fault. She had 6 more residents to help before lunch. But in that moment, I realized something painful. I still had stories to tell. But no one had the time to hear them. Over time, you start to shrink. You stop offering stories. You stop correcting people when they mispronounce your name. You begin accepting the version of yourself that fits inside the system. And that's the truth. In many nursing homes, you're not seen for who you are, only for what needs to be done for you. Truth number 4. When people talk about nursing homes, they focus on physical care, medications, mobility, hygiene. But no one really talks about what happens inside your mind. I didn't expect my mental health to suffer. I wasn't depressed when I moved in. I still enjoyed reading, writing, and reflecting. But over time, something shifted, so slowly, I almost didn't notice. It wasn't sadness. It was something quieter. A kind of mental fog. A sense of detachment from the world around me. Days blending together. Motivation slipping away. And the scariest part? Everyone thought I was doing fine. Because I wasn't crying. I wasn't complaining. I was just fading. The routines that were meant to bring order began to dull my sharpness. The lack of stimulating conversation. The same hallways. The same TV shows. It all started to blur my mental clarity. There's also something else. You stop being challenged. No one asks your opinion on meaningful things. No one pushes you to think, to debate, to create. You're just expected to follow along. And when your mind isn't fed, it doesn't stay still. It slowly starts to shrink. I remember the first time I forgot my nephew's birthday. Not because I didn't care, but because my inner calendar, the one I'd kept sharp all my life, was quietly slipping. Nursing homes rarely screen for mental health decline unless it's extreme. But in reality, low-grade depression, boredom, and mental fatigue are more common than anyone admits. So if you think moving into a facility will only affect your body, think again. Because if your mind isn't nourished, you lose the very thing that keeps you feeling alive: your clarity, your curiosity, your sense of self. Truth number 5. They called it my new home. But for months, it never felt like one. Yes, the room was clean. The sheets were fresh. There was a TV, a window, even a little side table with a vase. But it wasn't mine. Not really. You don't realize how deeply you connect to your environment until it's taken away. The sound your floor made when you walked barefoot. The corner where sunlight hit every morning. The smell of your own kitchen, even if it was just toast and tea. In the nursing home, everything is neutral. Functional. Designed for everyone, tailored for no one. And while the staff might try their best to make it feel warm, comfort can't be mass-produced. It comes from familiarity, from memory. I brought family photos. My own blanket. Even my favorite mug. But still, something was missing, something that no object could replace. It was the feeling of ownership. That unspoken truth that said, "This space belongs to me." At home, if I wanted to rearrange furniture, I could. If I wanted to hang a quote on the wall, no one had to approve it. But in the nursing home, every change requires permission. Even your space feels borrowed. And slowly, you stop adjusting things. You stop trying to make it yours. You accept the walls the way they are. That's when the loss sinks in. Because feeling at home isn't about where you sleep. It's about where you still feel like you matter. And in a place where everything is shared. Sometimes, you forget what it means to truly belong. Truth number 6. This is the hardest truth to admit, because it creeps in quietly. After a few months in the nursing home, I began feeling something I never expected. A quiet sense that my life was over, even though I was still alive. No one told me that the most dangerous part of growing old isn't physical decline. It's the slow erosion of purpose. When every day looks the same, when no one asks what you want, only what you need, something inside starts to go silent. You stop planning. You stop imagining. You stop thinking about the future, because no one else talks like you have one. You're no longer the person people go to for advice or help. You become the one they check on, feed, manage, protect. And after a while, you start to shrink into that version of yourself. I remember once hearing a resident say, "I'm just waiting now." Waiting for what? She didn't say. But we both knew. In a setting where everything revolves around maintenance, meals, meds, movement, it's easy to forget that growth is still possible. Joy is still possible. Learning is still possible. Even love is still possible. But only if you believe it is. And in nursing homes, that belief can slowly fade, because no one expects you to grow anymore. That's the truth. Not because anyone wants to make you feel small. But because the environment itself is built to keep you safe, not inspired. And when no one around you expects more, you quietly start expecting less from yourself too. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you, not just for watching, but for listening with your heart. This wasn't an easy video to make. Because regret isn't something we share lightly, especially at this stage of life. But sometimes, the most honest thing we can do, is admit what we wish we'd known sooner. Moving into a nursing home isn't always the wrong choice. For some, it brings safety, structure, and relief. But for many, it also brings a slow erosion of identity, freedom, connection, and purpose. I shared these 6 hard truths not to scare you, but to prepare you. So if you, or someone you love, is considering this move, you don't go in blind. You go in with eyes open and heart ready. And if you're already there, I want you to know this. You are not done. You are not invisible. And you don't have to accept a life that feels less than alive. Speak up. Personalize your space. Ask deeper questions. Reclaim your voice. Because even in a shared room, you can still create a life that feels like yours. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these truths resonated with you most? If this video helped you, like it. Subscribe for more honest, heart-driven content on aging with awareness. And share it with someone who might be facing this decision right now. Because the more we talk about these truths, the more power we take back over how we live, and how we age.